Hi campers, it's Ozzy the Horror Cub. Happy Friday the 13th. Take a trip with me to Camp Crystal Lake as we rate the entire Friday the 13th series. Let's get into it. That's right, today we're going to be ranking all 12 Friday the 13th films. And today being Friday the 13th, we couldn't have picked a perfect day to rate the entire series. My ranking is going to be totally different than yours, and that's okay. Let me know your ranking of the Friday the 13th series down below. Just wanted to wish you guys a happy Friday, and I can't wait to get into this list. Before we do, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe notification bell to be notified about all of our upcoming spooky content. Let's get into it. Coming in at number 12, we've got Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. Why this is number 12 on my list? First of all, when I want a Friday the 13th film, I want it predominantly set at Camp Crystal Lake. I'm a purist. I know what I want and I know what I need going forward in this series. I don't need Jason body swapping with different people because they're eating his heart. I don't need an FBI team taking him out a la Halloween 4. That's basically what this felt like. They were like doing that whole gimmicky stick of this is the final Friday. And I hate when films call themselves the final of anything because it just doesn't mean that it's the finality of this character. I mean, look at Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, as if. I also don't like the fact that you're adding in the subplot that Jason had a sister this entire time. This is now the 9th film into the series, and I just feel that it's too late into the series to introduce a completely new mythology for the character, as well as a ceremonial dagger that can drag Jason to hell. I do love that this movie sets up Freddy vs. Jason, but it's going to be number 12 on my list. Coming in at number 11 on my list, we've got Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. Now this film tries to go in a completely different direction from Friday's Part 1 and Part 4. Jason was dead, and we have to go under the guise of we don't really know who's committing these murders in this film. Could it be Jason? Was Jason resurrected? Is Tommy Jarvis from the previous film committing these murders in this loony farm? We don't really know what's going on. And we finally find out that it's not even Jason. It's a character that wants revenge for his son's death that was previous in the film. This film has really unlikable characters, a forgettable final girl, forgettable chases. This film to me, when I watch the Friday the 13th series, is not a must-watch. I say ignore it because it doesn't really add to the Jason Voorhees continuity, and I feel like Friday the 13th Part 6 washes over it anyways. So disregard this film. That to me is why this film is number 11. Coming in at number 10, we've got Jason Takes Manhattan. This was Jason's 8th adventure in the Friday the 13th series, and it really should have been called Jason Takes a Boat, because you know what? He doesn't even take Manhattan. Predominantly, this movie was filmed in Vancouver. They filmed a tiny portion of it in the Times Square setting where Jason does kick that fabulous boombox. I was into what they were selling, but it's like, okay, why does baby Jason have hair? It just didn't make any sense to me why Jason would demorph from the sewage sludge of New York. This film does not make sense. He predominantly is on that boat for the majority of the movie. He doesn't really get to Manhattan, and when he does, where are we? We're really not going into like the great New York locations that we could have because the movie wasn't really filmed in Manhattan. Only certain segments were, so I really do feel that this movie was a disservice to its fans. If you were gonna do Jason Takes Manhattan, he should have been there the entire film. And why New York City is just covered in toxic sludge? That didn't make any sense to me. Did it make sense to you? But that's why this movie's coming in at number 10. But be careful because people will hardcore defend Jason Takes Manhattan. I guess it's become a cult classic. Who knew? Coming in at number 9, it's gonna be Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. This movie is basically Jason Takes Carrie, because Carrie with telekinesis is the exact same thing that's happening in this movie with its final girl. The telekinesis angle was a great subplot to throw in this late in the game in the Friday the 13th series. You're not establishing a new mythology like they're trying to do in Part 9. All you're just trying to do is set Jason up with a fun opponent. I think that that's what this movie does. It gives you that fun sensibility of Jason versus somebody that has telekinesis and can actually be a worthy adversary to him, as opposed to Freddy Krueger later on in the series. This movie's a fun ride, however the characters are just your basic average Friday the 13th characters, and that's why this movie's so low on the list, because it can get boring at times, leading up to the telekinetic showdown between Jason and Tina. In at number 8, and this might shock a lot of you, but it's gonna be 1980's Friday the 13th. Yes, the original Friday is going 8th on my list. Why I'm putting it so low is because I think some of the sequels that expanded upon the Jason mythology really moved the story forward for the Friday the 13th series. I feel that what Friday the 13th, the original Friday, did was set up a great lure. It set up the mythology, it set up the world of the Friday the 13th legacy, with Pamela Voorhees committing the atrocities at Camp Blood to make up for the fact that her son Jason drowned years previous. So she's avenging her son's death. There's something to be said about that. It's very reminiscent of Psycho, but it's a reverse Psycho in a sense, and it works so well. This film really did pioneer the summer-based slasher. After this, you had films like The Burning, you had Cropsy, you had Sleepaway Camp with Angela. This film pushed the narrative forward and made films gory, and that has everything to do with Tom Savini. Tom Savini is a makeup artist genius, and his special effects in Friday, especially the Kevin Bacon kill, the arrow goes through his neck. It still haunts me to this day. This film sets up the Friday the 13th universe, but it's lower on my list just because, at the end of the day, all it's trying to do is mimic Halloween, the 1978 John Carpenter classic. Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller, the writer of the film and executive producer / director, admit to that as well. So you can't shade me in the comments for that. But it does set up Jason moving forward. Remember, he's not the predominant killer in this movie. It is Pamela Voorhees. Pamela, you did some good work and you made your son proud. You're getting 8th place. Coming in at number 7, if you want a fun ride, watch Jason X. It's not the greatest movie. You've basically got Kane Hodder in his last appearance as Jason. This movie's brutal. There's some great kills. I love the sleeping bag kill where Jason just starts banging them together. You get Uber Jason in this movie as well. Jason is transformed using futuristic technology because he's cryogenically frozen. Camp Crystal Lake has been put into a research center. It's really interesting the concepts that this movie went through, and it is a sci-fi odyssey. It's Jason in the future using futuristic technology to modify his body as he tries to take down a bunch of college students essentially as they're trying to explore Earth. It's an interesting concept, there's some interesting kills in this movie, but I really do think that this movie jumps a shark in a sense. You can't take it serious, it's just a fun ride. Watch it for the fun deaths. The head in the liquid nitrogen, that's one of the coolest death scenes in the entire movie. This movie can't be considered an instant classic, but again, people will defend it. For me though, it's gonna come in at number 7. Coming in at 6th place, we've got Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D. Let me tell you something, if you can find a 3D cut of this film, it's a great fun ride to watch. You've got a great final girl, you've got a great showdown in the barn. This is where Jason really does essentially become Jason because he gets his hockey mask and becomes infamous towards the character, because previous to this in Friday the 13th, he's not the predominant killer, it is Mrs. Voorhees. And in Friday the 13th Part 2, he's wearing a burlap sack around his head. This is where Jason gets his iconic look. Sure, the 3D effects are gimmicky, but it's still a fun time if you can get a cut of the film. And the score is banging. If you haven't heard the Friday the 13th theme from Part 3, the 3D version, go listen to it right now because it's a Boogie Fever soundtrack. It's everything you want in a music soundtrack and more. This movie is classic. It's number 6. Coming in at number 5, we've got Friday the 13th Part 2. Ginny is hands down one of the best final girls in the Friday the 13th series. She's so resilient. I do think if you're gonna make a Friday the 13th movie, this is how you do it. You expand upon the mythology of the world that was created in the last film, and you really push the envelope because Jason wasn't the killer in the first Friday. Mrs. Voorhees was. Now you've got Jason going after people that are trying to reopen Camp Crystal Lake, and he's avenging the death of his mother. And I love that you get this chilling backstory of Jason over the campfire as well. This movie really does do a great job of setting up the final showdown between Jason and Ginny, and how she takes Mrs. Voorhees' sweater and persona and is able to take down Jason using that kind of reverse psychology. It's a great concept, it's a great score. I love this movie. That's why Friday the 13th Part 2, you're coming in at 5th place. Coming in at 4th place, and this might shock a lot of people, but it's gonna be Freddy vs. Jason. This movie to me is again just a fun ride. When I watch a Friday the 13th film, I just want to see fun characters getting butchered in fun ways. Jason closing the bet on that one guy at the very start. Hilarious. It is a different interpretation of Jason. It is a more sympathetic version of Jason too. I don't think we've ever seen Jason so sympathetic in any of the films. He comes off as predominantly ruthless, and he is ruthless in this film as well, but they really do sympathize with Jason in the human aspect of the fact that this was a little boy that drowned, that fell victim to the fact that people were disregarding him because he was deformed. So you really do care for Jason in a really big sense, and you do kind of want him to take down Freddy at the end of the day. And it didn't matter how much you like A Nightmare on Elm Street, you still felt bad for Jason and the way that Freddy was making him suffer, but there's some great moments between him and Freddy in this film. I especially love where he's being ping-ponged like a giant pinball game, and that's why it's number 4. Coming in at number 3, we've got Friday the 13th, Part 4, The Final Chapter. Again, I hate any movie that's going to bill their film as the final chapter because it totally wasn't. However, I will give Part 5 credit because they didn't revive Jason right away. They tried to go in a different route with Roy Burns. Didn't work out successfully. Kind of reminds me of Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, where they tried to go that anthology route with the Michael Myers series. It doesn't work with Jason, it didn't work with Halloween, and here we are. Jason was gonna basically die at the end of this series. This was, at the time, the final Friday. You got Tommy Jarvis being introduced to the series, played by Corey Feldman. I really do think that having a child in these movies makes the stakes a little bit higher, because previously, I don't think we've seen a child at Camp Crystal Lake yet. It's not until Friday the 13th Jason Lives that we see children at the camp setting. In the flashback sequences in the original Friday, you do see kids there, but predominantly it's always the camp counselors a week or two ahead trying to get the camp ready. This film has a great Jason death scene. I really do love how the machete just goes straight through his face and Jason just kind of slides right down on it. I do love the Tommy Jarvis angle, and I love how they explore that in the further sequels. This is a great Friday. If you want basically what a good Jason movie is, this is a great Jason movie, because the Friday the 13th movies, from Part 1 to Part 3, they were still trying to figure out what makes Jason tick, because Jason wasn't really Jason. He didn't have his hockey mask until Part 3. He kind of had a Town That Dreaded Sundown vibe with the burlap sack that was on his head in Part 2, so it's almost like Jason was still finding his identity. And by Part 4, this is Jason Voorhees. It's almost like this is the fully formed character. Leading up until Part 6, you get zombie Jason moving forward in the series, but I feel like this was the epitome of what Jason Voorhees was in the original first 4 Friday. This is what Jason was supposed to be. That's why it's coming in at 3rd place. Coming in at number 2, and this might surprise a lot of you, did that rhyme? It's gonna be Friday the 13th, the 2009 remake. Maybe it's because of Jared Padalecki, I don't know what it is. This movie just charms the hell out of me, because what it does, it takes the first 4 Friday films, compresses them together to give you the Jason origin saga with Mrs. Voorhees in the very first start of the first 5 minutes of the film, and then it propels the Jason Voorhees story using the identity of the bone structure of parts 2 to 4. I think it's an interesting idea. You get Sackhead Jason, you get Hockey Mask Jason. Jason is absolutely brutal in this film. If you want the most brutal Jason, I think it's gotta be this remake Jason. He even runs after his victims. Derek Myers, amazing. I love the vibe that they were going for. It was gritty, but you still had the douchebag characters from the Friday series, so all the staples were there. You know, you still had the stoners, you still had the jock, you still had the characters that were unlikable, but you did have characters that you did care about too. I really do wish we could have seen more sequels to this reboot of the series. That's why this film is coming in 2nd place. Coming in at number 1, is it any surprise? It's gonna be Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. He's Back, The Man Behind the Mask by Alice Cooper, one of the best songs for a horror movie soundtrack, horror movie music video ever created. This movie sees Jason coming back as a zombie. Tommy Jarvis is back from Part 4 and Part 5. He's really the fully evolved version of the character. He needs to put an end to Jason once and for all, but in doing so, he makes Jason become zombie Jason and brings him back to life accidentally. But this movie has everything. It even has kids in danger, because now we've got kids at the camp, because Camp Blood has been brought back. Camp Crystal Lake is always coming back. You've got the whole finality of wrapping this up by trying to put Jason back in the lake where he came from. I love that idea. I love Tommy Jarvis as a final boy. It's really an interesting idea, because you do have a final girl in this movie in a sense too with the sheriff's daughter, but it's predominantly, this film is about Tommy Jarvis and his struggle to basically overcome Jason, who severely traumatized him years earlier. I love movies that have to deal with trauma. This movie has a great soundtrack. This movie's fast, it's furious, it's just Jason killing a bunch of people, and I think that's perfect, because this is zombie Jason at his best. When he's taking down the corporate retreat as they're playing paintball, you're gonna have a lot of great comedic moments. The sex scene in the RV, hysterical. This movie's got everything that a good Friday the 13th film should have, and if you really want the perfect Friday the 13th film to watch on Friday the 13th, you need to watch Part 6, Jason Lives. That's why this film is number 1. Well, Halloweenies, that's all the time that we have left for today. Let me know how my list compares to yours. I just wanted to wish everyone a happy Friday the 13th. I hope that you have a really spooky day. Don't forget to subscribe to all of our future content, as next week we've got our ranking of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films. Until next time, stay spooky.